Welcome to Essential Oil Architecture series. I've designed this so that I can help aromatherapists be fluent in essential oil structure, safety, and scent logic. So even if you don't smell anything, even if you've never seen the bottle before, this is the way you can speak really clearly and confidently about essential oils as a true professional. So this is what I've done, and I know it works. You don't even have to know what oil you're talking about. It's so much fun. And before we start, I would like to ask you and take a minute to ask yourself and really answer this. On a scale from 1 to 10, how valuable would it be to know how to explain and interpret any essential oil? So imagine that you know the therapeutic properties of any oil, even if you never heard of it. So somebody presents you with a rare oil never heard of, and now as an aromatherapist, it's like you're expected to explain it. Or you didn't smell it and you have to say something about the smell. You're like on the spot right in front of like 100 people and they're telling you about this oil and now you have to say something smart. Or speak very calmly and professionally and clearly to this group of people, whether 5 or 500, and you don't even know the name of the essential oil. So have I intrigued you? How valuable would it be to have this skill? Because that's what we're going to start building today. And I'm super excited to share it. The reason I'm going to start using these scales from 1 to 10, it's actually more for you guys, or women. So if we don't measure things before we start, we don't know if we have to actually made a change. So you don't have to share it, although I would really love to hear it. But when you name it for yourself, then you will know at the end if you actually feel differently about it. And actually, you can ask yourself how confident you are in talking about an oil that you never smelled before, that you never heard about before, or don't even know the name. So how confident are you about talking these oils? So you will see at the beginning and at the end of this lesson, and then the next ones, how you progress. So these questions from scale from 1 to 10 is often more for you to be able to see a difference that is measurable. And of course, for me, it's useful so that I can see that I'm making that difference for you. Now, to give you some background on why I created this series and why I think it's super necessary right now to talk about it is because I've seen for a couple of years, well, for a while now, but definitely in these last 5-10 years, that the role of the aromatherapist has really changed. So when I started my aromatherapy journey, it was very different. Not many books were translated in the language that I was teaching in. People did use internet, of course, but it has been taking such a different turn in the last couple of years, especially with AI coming, with having databases. So it is not as valuable to our clients anymore to come to an aromatherapist to just know about oils. So what is this oil for? They can find this information which was not as easily available. So even like 5 years ago, you had to travel to a conference. Not so many conferences were online. Now anybody can be at a conference because they're all at least hybrid. And a lot of them are actually free, like summits. So what is it that as aromatherapists we need to be doing now that is different than just 3 years ago? And that is, we need to know not to explain what essential oils are for. They can find that in books, online, in databases, but we need to be able to explain the things they can't find in books. So we really do need to be able to look at an essential oil that we never smelled before, we never heard of. Is this rare oil our neighbor just distilled like 2 days ago? And be able to talk about it. And it's possible. So if we as aromatherapists cannot interpret oils, who will? Because the information is just not coming out for these new oils. We have like 500, so at least a few hundred we don't have research on yet. So just to compare, and I love visual stuff so that we can actually see it. It's not just me making some random conclusions. So the way we used to do things, it's clients would come for us as aromatherapists and ask us about oils, and then we would explain why this oil, why that oil. But now they already have that information and they have very different questions. So like 10, 15, 20 years ago, people would ask me, so Melanie, how do you use, well, lavender or geranium or cedarwood? And now they come to me and ask, well, I read about this and this and this. Why are these things contradictory? What is this oil about? I can't find the information. So it's a very different question. So we used to provide facts that are known, that are traditional, like every book has the essential oil profiles. So this is the information we were expected to provide. And now we're expected to explain things, the why, the how, the things that are not in books and not available on summits and AI. So we are really finally living like aromatherapists are becoming experts, which is wonderful, but it's a different set of questions and situations we're dealing with. So change happened slowly through decades of tradition, but in the last, well, even 10 years, but 3 to 5, definitely things really exploded with all of these digital things being available. And it's been very different kind of thinking, different questions, different approach to essential oils. We also have many more people interested, which is wonderful, but we also have a lot of people calling themselves aromatherapists. And how do we now differentiate ourselves as an aromatherapist from this huge new population out there? How do we find our space and place, which is available for everybody, of course. 10, 15, 30 years ago and more, we would focus on 30 to 50 essential oils that we really knew well from the essential oil profiles, from the certifications that we got. But now we need to know beyond that. Even if you cover 50 essential oils in your certification class, what about the 500 other ones on the market? Those are the ones they're going to ask you about. And so interpretation was optional because you would just need to know all of this stuff that aromatherapists would learn at the programs. But now it's really not. Now it's essential because we want to be perceived as experts and as professionals, but we need to provide then information that is not available to anybody, to everybody, I mean. So how do we differentiate ourselves? So the new way, what I am going to show you how I do it is to read an essential oil, not to memorize facts about each essential oil particularly, because there's like 500 and it's impossible, but how to actually look at what's in it and be able to make sense out of it in a way that it's safe, in a way that it's accurate, in a way that it's professional, in a way that makes sense to everybody, and that you feel confident, clear, and certain that you're not just blabbing, that you're actually saying things that are useful. So my way of doing it is that I flip it. So instead of looking at the name and the oil and traditional way of interpreting, I look at what's inside and look at different patterns, and I put them in visual patterns, but patterns in general that you can interpret in all oils. So we're going to look at scent and safety, and then compatibility with blending. So when you look at the essential oil, how much does it actually make sense to blend with another oil and which one? And it's a framework that I use every time, and I have been using it for actually around 20 years. And I didn't even know it was a framework. I thought that everybody was doing it this way. And the reason I have developed it is because I was asked these questions. I was the person they would ask when they didn't know how to speak about a certain oil. And then I had to find a way that works. And I was teaching people like pharmacists and chemists and medical professionals. So I had to make sure that what I'm saying makes sense and it's truthful. So that's how I developed this framework. Another thing I would like to tell you before we dive into this is the difference between essential oil chemistry and vocabulary. So I have noticed that a lot of aromatherapists are afraid of essential oil chemistry. But a lot of what we do in aromatherapy and what we are looking at is just definitions. So this is the part where I would like you to keep an open mind and perhaps look at it from another perspective. A lot of things we need to know from chemistry is vocabulary. Just humor me and go with it. So this is my third time moving to a country where I don't speak a word of it. Okay, like hello is already intimidating. I'm like hello, goodbye, and okay, I know a little bit more now. But before you start speaking a language, and I'm telling you for experience, this is my third time not counting my native language, you need to collect a certain vocabulary. Okay, and then you can speak the language. So a lot of people get intimidated in aromatherapy when they hear things like a molecule, monoterpene, when they hear something like even evaporating, distilling. You know, these are the words we need to get used to. So when I'm going to be talking about today, when I say this molecule or this chemical component, just take a deep breath and remind yourself that it's just vocabulary. We are not going to be actually looking at any molecules. We're not going to be breaking any bonds. We're not going to be talking about formulas. And just recognize, and I'm going to ask you at the end also to grade yourself and to see if it made sense, that how comfortable and uncomfortable are you when I say things like limonene or monoterpene, and it had nothing to do with chemistry. It had to do with vocabulary. So now before we dive in, just whenever a word that is not something you use every day comes up, just take a breath and remind yourself it is vocabulary. It is not chemistry, okay? And that is the big change that can happen just by understanding that you need to be using these words more frequently, and we need to know what these words mean, but you do not need to know what the bonds look like, what they break, how many carbons and stuff they have in them. You need to know what to do with it, okay? So I hope that's already helpful, that by understanding the difference between vocabulary that comes from chemistry and actual chemistry, there is a difference. And what we're going to be dealing with is vocabulary. And that's precisely why I call it Dropsmart, because it makes you sound smarter, okay? So now I'm ready to share with you how I do this. So just be honest before we go on. Just looking at this, how nervous does it make you from 1 to 10? Are you already intimidated looking at this pie chart and a bunch of these hydrocarbons, alcohols, these names here? So in aromatherapy, it's not just that we have to know words like monoterpenes, sesquiterpenes. We also need to know a bunch of words like antibacterial. And this one that I really have problem always pronouncing, but I'm going to try just to show you. Aninoceptive. I'm not sure if I pronounced it right. So we need to be able to read these and know what they are, not necessarily know the entire background of it. What I want to do today is not tell you what oil we're going to talk about. Because it's precisely what I want you to understand. This is all you need to know. You need to be able to understand this color or whatever color you are going to put in front of you. So I'm using Dropsmart today, but I did this for over a decade without Dropsmart by drawing this for myself without being a chemist, okay? So what you need to know is this stuff here. and that is in which categories it goes. And Dropsmart calculates this part for you anyway, so you just need to know how to read it. You literally need to know how to read. That's all. Okay? And this is what it sounds like when I see an oil like this. So I prepare for myself a pie chart, either at Dropsmart, or I used to draw this for whoever I'm going to have the lecture for. And you can say something like this. First of all, this orange is monoterpenes. And monoterpenes, if we just very slightly remember, is a scary word. It sounds very smart. But what it means is that they are a certain group of molecules. Do you see how that already sounds intimidating? So it's a certain group of molecules, and these are little ones. So that's all we're going to talk about today is monoterpenes. And me recognizing that this oil, whatever the oil is, and you can already guess which one you think it is because it has, see, almost 98% of monoterpenes, is going to be very predictable. Okay, so this is what I would sound like if I would go and somebody shows me this oil. Oh, this oil is rich in monoterpenes. It has over 95% of monoterpenes, which tells me that it is a high note. Definitely a high note because monoterpenes, all monoterpenes, are a very high note, which also tells me that it's going to evaporate very quickly. That means that we're going to smell it for only 15 to around 15 minutes. So that tells me that you're either going to have to repeat it if you're putting it in air, or you're going to have to blend it with something else that has also middle and base notes so that the whole thing is a little bit more holistic, more blended, more balanced as a smell. So if we're talking about smell of this particular oil, which by the way, I don't know what it is, I don't know the name, nothing, but I can already tell you that this particular essential oil is definitely going to blend well with something like lavender, because lavender lacks a little bit of that high note. But it has middle and a little bit of low. It can blend well with things, anything that has a middle and a base note. So perhaps a ylang ylang, or anything that you want to freshen up, because monoterpenes have a fresh smell. However, they have a very light smell as well. So if I'm going to blend this particular oil with lavender, that means I'm going to need to put a few more drops of it. So if I have 1 drop of lavender or 1 drop of this oil, that means that I'm not going to smell it at all, probably. I'm going to need at least 3 to 5 of these drops with lavender or geranium to be able to, balance the smell. So this is what I can tell you about the smell. And then we move on to safety. So this particular oil, because it's so rich in monoterpenes, I have to watch out for 2 things. And number one, that means it's going to oxidate very fast, because monoterpenes, all monoterpenes, and this is another place where I want to just encourage you to feel free talking about these classifications in chemistry. That's another big word, chemistry classification. All that means is that we put it in certain groups. So in Dropsmart, you have groups as in size, so monoterpene, sesquiterpene, that describes the size of the molecule. See how smart I sound? Nothing about chemistry, all definition. And then we have groups. So alcohol is a group, aldehyde is a group. Okay, so it's a functional group. And I've seen a lot of people not feel confident speaking about this because we had that whole few years of functional group theory versus functional groups. So just to make a distinction here, we're talking about classifications and not even functional groups at this moment. So you can feel free to say this stuff. This stuff is really for all monoterpenes. It is not I'm not talking about specific benefits of all monoterpenes. That is hard and that can get you in trouble. So what you want to stick with is stuff that really applies to all monoterpenes. So all I've said so far is for all monoterpenes. So we said a lot about smell. Then we can go into safety and storage. So storage safety. All oils. So this particular oil that I don't know anything about what it's called or which oil it is, I can tell you that it oxidizes quickly because it has over 70% of monoterpenes. So I have to watch its storage. After a year, it will probably not be good for use. I can tell you that because of that it oxidizes fast, we have to be extra careful because it can sensitize the skin. It can sensitize the skin because it oxidates fast. So do you see just how much information I can already give you without knowing the name, knowing which oil it is? And we talked about a lot about smell. We talked about what to blend it with. We talked about how to blend it. And we mentioned a safety for how we're going to store the oil and skin safety. Now, if I want to go particular, and this is tricky, this is the part you don't want to do with generalization, because here we were in general, all monoterpenes do this. This is where you then want to go inside and look at what it's made of. If you're ready for that. If you're not, you don't have to. Oh, let me just, so if you're not ready, this will already be great. You can already talk a lot about the safety and about the smell and things like that. So you can stop there. Otherwise, or if you have Dropsmart, it's going to tell it for you. Now you want to see how to use this oil, as in real therapeutic benefits, and that you want to connect to the actual chemical constituents. So see, we're using the word chemical constituent. We're not going to go into bonds and what limonene looks like. So this particular oil, and you can say this without knowing anything, to say this particular oil is made up of almost 95% of limonene, which tells me it's very singular in its nature. It tells me that this oil is good to blend with something else because I want a more balanced approach to it. I want to attack a certain topic, a certain benefit from different angles, and that is better than to have different components in. But limonene is very well researched, and because it's at such a quantity, almost 100%, you can speak with a lot of clarity and certainty when you're going to now I can actually offer what people can use this oil. I don't know what the name of the oil is, what they can actually use it for without knowing the name of the oil. I mean, how magical is that? I don't know about you, but for me, that was really a game changer when I figured this way of speaking to anybody, and it makes sense. This particular oil has almost 95% of limonene, and that means research backed it up that it's analgesic. What does that tell me? That tells me that I can use this essential oil for different kinds of pain to relieve it, especially because it also has anti-inflammatory. So it's really good. They have different reasons to use it for pain. A lot of antimicrobial action on these specific bacteria, for example, oral bacteria. So perhaps for oral hygiene. Antidepressants. So it tells me that I can use this oil to help people feel better in general. Maybe not really go for, depressive states, but it will help people feel better. This oil is definitely uplifting, right? Another thing that it will tell me, antimicrobial action. So you can scroll down what this is, see, antispasmodic. So many reasons to use it for different pains, and this is contractions, antiviral. This particular one is, so I can use this oil to help me with a cold sore, for example. You can go in complete details in how to use this oil without knowing the name, penetration enhancer. So it's good to keep in mind if you're formulating that using this particular oil is going to help oils with heavier molecules penetrate the skin faster. Again, a lot of vocabulary, but just using it is going to help you be more comfortable saying things like penetration enhancer, repellent for all sorts of stuff, including some mosquitoes, wound healing. So we can use this oil to help heal wounds faster. And do you see how much things I can say without knowing the name of the oil, without ever smelling the oil? I told you about its smell, I told you how to blend it because of smell, and I told you exactly how to use it. Now, to go beyond that, if you have access to Dropsmart, what you can do, it just has, again, smart calculator, because it calculates this for you. So you can just say that all these chemical constituents, because of this percentage, you can use it for a lot of antimicrobial things, like perhaps some infections, and yeah, just so many useful things. So let me show you just a little bit more so that you see just how accurate we were, and to show you just how much more we know about this oil than there is in books. And keep in mind, Dropsmart is a database. It is a collection of stuff. So we collect research and we collect different information from different books, from aromatherapy journals. So you are going to have a lot more here than you are in any book about this particular oil. So I'm still not going to tell you which oil it is. So look, this oil, okay, phototoxic, you would not know here because it's such a tiny bit of molecules. But see, skin sensitization and oxidation, that is because of monoterpenes, and we were able to predict that. Look how much benefits there are. Not many. So we were able to actually talk more about this oil from here. Look how many benefits we have here with research, all of this. And then you can make conclusions for it, because if you know how to use these benefits, look up to here, all of this, wound healing and stuff like that. It's not here. So they did not do testing on this particular oil that it's on wound healing. They did not do testing that it's on pain. They did not do the testing that it's penetration enhancer. So often, even with oils, because this is an oil that probably all of you either have at home or have smelled it before. I purposely use this one because it's easy for the first time. But you have so much more info, because you know that this oil is definitely penetration enhancer, because there's 95% of chemical constituent in there that has proven effect as a penetration enhancer. So whether you come to this part or not, you are actually going to be more informed once you thoroughly analyze this. Because if you go the classical way, and that is to look first at what books and research says, you're going to stop there. It's going to be enough for you. It's already a lot of info, and you're not going to be able to understand the dynamics of the oil because you have already made up your mind here. But if you go backwards, you're going to have a different perception of the oil, and the one that is actually in many cases more accurate, because you're free from judging this oil and what it's for, and looking through the lens of another person. You're just looking at the oil and what it has in it, and then seeing, oh, it's for this, and I can use it for that, and it's going to smell like that, and I can blend it with that, before you are putting limitations on yourself with this. So that is the oil I wanted to show you first. And now I would like to know, which oil do you think it is? And then the next oil I'm going to show you is going to be a little more complex. So it's going to be very interesting because I'm going to show you what it looks like when you have an oil that has high notes and the low notes, and how does that affect the oil. There is no middle note at all. For your home improvement, or for you to be able to take this home and start implementing it right now, what I want you to do is to go to Dropsmart and go here to advanced filter. This is if you have premium access. And you go here to chemical groups and components. You take a deep breath if you don't like chemistry, because it has nothing to do with chemistry. It has to do with categorizing. And you click on monoterpenes. Okay? So you can also choose a whole group. And you put 50, you can play with this, but let's say 50. So all oils that have over 50% of monoterpenes. And you click apply. And you're going to be surprised. Look how many oils. Let me just put this so I can read. And you can see more oils. It says here, it has over 200 oils that have over 50%. So you can already know that all of these oils are going to oxidate fast. So you have to watch them for storage. They have a good chunk of the oil that is high note. And we're going to go into this with other oils where we're going to look at then which note is this oil. Is it really one note, or is it two or three? Or that's another topic I really want to tackle in this series, because rarely is one oil one note. And that makes so much confusion in our field of what are we talking about. So when you look at these oils, now you're going to be able to say that all of these oils have these things in common. You have to watch that they can also sensitize the skin, because it's going to oxidate fast. And that's going to be really helpful for something like, well, let me find an oil that we really don't know anything about, or very little. So let's say this one. Look, nothing. I can just nod here, but I can tell you already, like, there's nothing about this oil written anywhere, but I can tell you that this oil is a high note, it's going to oxidate fast, we have to watch out for the skin, all the same things that I just told you for the other one. Now we can take a look at see, limonene, over 50% of this oil. Dropsmart calculates what you can use this oil for. So it is just going to give you that edge. I don't want you to start, being a prophet too much, because, but you can say a lot without knowing the oil's name or knowing how to pronounce it. So what I want you to do to get acquainted with this is, as I said, you go to the advanced filter, you find the monoterpenes, because that's what we talked about, and then you can see which oils fit into this category. In my experience, anything with 70% or more is really worth than knowing that this oil has over 70% of monoterpenes, because it's going to definitely affect a lot how your oil is going to be used. And then you're going to see where a lot of confusion comes in aromatherapy. Now, for those of you who are extra organized and have your own favorite oils already in Dropsmart, I encourage you to use the advanced filter in your favorite oils, and then look at all of your favorite oils that have over, I don't know, whatever percentage you choose, and get reacquainted. See if now you're going to look at these oils from a different lens. What am I now going to think about angelica root? What am I now going to think about nutmeg? What am I now going to think about all these pines that have such a rich chemistry of monoterpenes? Does this make a difference in my life now that I understand that I can speak about these oils this way? Thank you, everybody, and have a beautiful day ahead and weekend. See you next time.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.